I know of it, but I don't know it in great detail. I know the term. Funnily enough, the Russian edition of my book, the Russian language edition, came out this time last year, and there's been some interesting responses from my Russian readership. So one of the things I'll probably do is probably pursue some of this stuff to see what their opinions are on that.
Absolutely. Photographic memory. Now,
eidetic memory, yes.
Do you remember the guy who flew over London and he managed to paint the entire skyline?
Yeah, I know. He's a young black guy, Wilshire, Stephen Wilshire.
Yeah,
that shows my eidetic memory, which I have, unfortunately. Stephen Wilshire.
Well done.
Stephen Wilshire's a fascinating lad, and in fact, a lot of his work I would have referenced in the initial version of my book, because I'm also fascinated by the implications of the guy Kim Peake over in Utah in America that Rain Man was based upon. These savant syndrome people quite fascinate me, because I again argue that savant syndrome is to do with the channels of communication between the daemon and the eidolon being open in a very peculiar way. If you look at people who have things such as Asperger's, autism, and these are all allied in many, many ways to the overall concept of cheating the ferryman. I did a show on BBC Radio Liverpool on this a few weeks ago, and we got some quite interesting responses.
Excellent. We spoke about, I think you briefly mentioned Richard Hoagland, and I'm familiar with his work through Project Camelot. Now, are you familiar with John Lear at the same time?
No.
They talk about similar things. They're both into the moon and the, similar related topics. I think John Lear is one of the guys that says you will constantly have to come back, and he was referencing reincarnation, unless you learn to live with love, forgiveness, and empathy and things like that. So how would that relate to you? Because I know obviously reincarnation isn't something that directly works with yourself, but it doesn't get ruled out. The
reincarnation as a concept, I have no hard and fast feelings on it, purely and simply because I don't understand. I again don't understand the scientific mechanism by which reincarnation can work, in the sense that I don't understand how a soul can transmigrate from one consciousness to another. Also, if you look into a lot of the research that's being done, and I'm very aware of the work of people like Ian Stevenson, that you look into some critical work of this, the traditions of reincarnation are a little bit confused as to whether the soul reincarnates straight away, whether it waits in a bardo state before it reincarnates. There's a lot of questions about it. But effectively, I don't go there purely and simply because I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas my hypothesis is brain-based. Whether consciousness is within the brain or not is beside the point. But my hypothesis does not fly in the face of known neurology. In other words, consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain. Now, having said that, what I suggest is that within the cheating the ferryman hypothesis, rather like Phil Connors in the movie Vanilla Sky, idiot, the movie Groundhog Day, you will live your life over and over and over again. And I suggest that after many, many iterations, you will live the perfect life. You will effectively reach nirvana, samsara state. When you do that, the daemon and the eidolon become a unified being. And when you become a unified being, you will then move on to whatever the next level of consciousness is. And you're probably allowed to die. And remember, if my hypothesis is right, you could live 1 trillion lives in the split second before you die. But to an observer, it's only a split second.
Absolutely, yeah. When you look at it that way, it makes a lot more sense when you when you sum it up as simple as that. And you've got obviously parallel universes, alternate realities, and this is where sort of I started getting into the law of attraction, and
yes,
you can touch on this with films like What the Bleep Do We Know, and I think that one was called The Secret as well. But
Well,
I'm not
funnily
too keen on
enough,
The Secret, but yeah, carry
yeah,
on.
what the bleep is excellent. The Secret is less so. Now, again, you might be interested to know that next Friday I'm doing a big lecture in London, and I've been
Okay.
invited down by Pavel Mikulowski, who was one of the operator producers of What the Bleep, who's also a big fan of my stuff. And I've been invited down to do a talk for his organisation down in Holborn. And a lot of the What the Bleep stuff fascinates me. I have certain problems with the links to Ramtha,
Okay.
which is in the movie. I always have problems with people who channel ancient beings, and I
Yeah,
always
that's a
find
funny one.
difficulty with that. But then again, it could be the daemon. It could be her daemon. So in which case, it fits within my overall hypothesis. This is not
Yeah.
to say that I reject anything that doesn't fit within my hypothesis, but I want to stay within science if I possibly can.
Exactly. That's the best way to go, I suppose, because you're going to reach a bigger audience, and you're going to be able to defend yourself a lot easier.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're obviously relying on not only your own experience, but the experience of respected researchers.
Well, that's the thing, with guys like ourselves, and there's many of us around the world, what we're saying has validity, but we will not get our ideas across to the cynics or the people who don't want to believe unless we put our points of view across in a structured, systematic, scientific and logical way. And that is the only way these concepts are going to be got across to the major part of the population. And that's very much the approach I take.
Absolutely. What, in any area that we may not have covered, either an incident that is massively profound in your own life, or a description from somebody else's, or just something about your work that we may not have covered that we might be able to speak about in the last, say, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Okay, let's think about this. Gosh, there's so many, really. I suppose one of the most fascinating things I was sent. Well, there's two things that I think were fascinating. There's one or two incidents whereby individuals have had very, very imminent daemons within their lives for most of their lives. And there's one guy called Tom Jones, but that's not unusual, who lives out in China. And Tom emailed me to let me know that his daemon had been part of his life for a long, long time. And I think it was Tom, yeah. I think it was Tom anyway, but suffice to say, when he was younger, he lived in, and forgive me, Tom, if I've got the wrong guy here. No, this is a guy called Alan. Sorry, it's a different guy. A guy called Alan. And Alan used to live in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and he was a member of the Sealess Scouts, which were the kind of the SAS of the White Rhodesian Army during the Troubles in the late 60s. And he was up in an area called Mount Darwin in the north of the country, and he was a soldier. And he was riding on the front of an armoured vehicle, riding on the submachine gun at the front. As they came past a known quiet area of their route, a voice in his head turned round and said, "Ambush, ambush, ambush, duck," screamed at him. He didn't react. The next thing he felt was a physical presence push him off the seat into the netting, the camouflage netting at the side. As he did so, 3 bullets ripped into the seat of his armoured vehicle. It would have hit him in the throat, the stomach and the groin and would have killed him instantly. That voice saved his life. From then onwards, that voice was imminent in his life. But not only that, but this daemon figure, or this daemon being, used to give him advice. He emigrated to America, and he was an electrician in a factory, and the whole factory had shut down. He needed to find what the problem was. His daemon told him to go to a particular cupboard. He opened that cupboard, and inside the cupboard was a mass of wires. The daemon turned round to him and said, "See that white wire there? Cut that white wire," which he did, and put it together to another wire, and all the lights came on. He said, 3 days later, my daemon really proved just how weird his power was. He was walking across the shop floor of the factory carrying a cup of coffee in his right hand. As he was walking across, his left hand came up, went across the top of the cup as a blob of oil hit the top of his hand and went round the sides. The hand had stopped a blob of oil going into his coffee. Now that really takes an extra angle to something called the alien hand syndrome.
Yeah.
So clearly all these things really, really influenced his life, and it warned him and manipulated his life in one way or another. A final example is a lady in New York whose daemon warned her. She was walking up the upper west side, and as she was walking along, a man crashed against her. As he walked past her, her daemon put the image of John Lennon in her head. She went home completely confused as to why this was. It was early December, probably December the 6th, 1980. The next day, John Lennon was shot dead. The person that brushed against her was Mark Chapman.
Wild.
And that's the power of the daemon. That is how
There's so many, isn't there? There's so many examples. They're never ending, to be honest.
They are absolutely. And that's why I'm saying to your audience out there, join my forum. Tell me your experiences. Put your experiences on there. This is now a big thing that people are reading from across the world. We want it to be a movement, but I can only have people join.
Yeah, do you want to let our audience know the address of your website and forum?
Yep. The website is www.anthonypeake.com/forum. I'll give that again, www.anthonypeake.com, which is my website. And then if you want to get onto the forum, it's /forum. If anybody wants to get on there and they find it difficult to get through the passwording, just drop me an email at tony@anthonypeake.com. That's tony@anthonypeake.com, and I will actually facilitate you joining. So I'll set you up and everything else, and you can start posting straight away. Whatever your experiences are, they are relevant to what I'm doing, believe me. Even if you think they're not, we've only touched 10% of what I talk about on there.
Excellent. Now, before we finish up the show, I'm just going to give our listeners some web addresses for them to check out. Obviously, we've got anthonypeake.com, our own northeasttruth.com, our social network, northetruth.ning.com. We're hosted on tnsradio.com. Check that out for previous podcasts as well. It's been a great show, and we'll definitely want to speak to you sometime in the future, Anthony.
I'd love to.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Can highly recommend at least your second book. I don't have your first book yet. We've thoroughly enjoyed having you on. I hope the audience have enjoyed it as much as we have here. Is there anything finally you'd like to relay?
Just to say thank you guys on Northeast Truth for giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience as well. I'm sorry if I might have come across as being sort of trying to get as much information to you guys as possible, but really there is so much to get across to people that I tend to probably talk 10 to the dozen. So please forgive me for that. Please also forgive me for talking over you once or twice. I don't like doing that either. But thank you very much. Thanks to Angela. Thanks to Vincent as well. Thanks for everybody else that's been involved. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I really look forward to being on Northeast Truth very, very soon.
Excellent. Likewise, Tony, and speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Anthony.
Good night, folks.
See ya.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.